In the sprawling estate of the Harrington family in the hills of Connecticut, 8-year-old Noah Harrington lived in a world of perfect silence. Born into unimaginable wealth, with a father who commanded boardrooms and a late mother whose portrait still hung in every grand hallway, Noah had never heard the sound of rain on the windows, the laughter of other children, or even his own father's voice saying, "I love you." For 8 long years, the best specialists in New York and Boston had examined him, run every test imaginable, and delivered the same verdict: profound congenital deafness, irreversible. The boy communicated through gestures, written notes, and the quiet language of his wide blue eyes that seemed to carry more sorrow than any child should know. He spent his days wandering the vast mansion like a ghost, touching his right ear constantly, a small, unconscious habit that everyone had long stopped noticing. Victor Harrington, the billionaire tech mogul whose fortune had been built on innovations in sound engineering, ironically enough, had thrown money at the problem until there was nothing left to buy. Private jets to Switzerland for experimental treatments, custom hearing aids that collected dust in drawers, therapists who came and went like seasons. Nothing worked. Victor's grief had hardened into a quiet rage at the universe, and he buried himself in work, leaving Noah in the care of nannies, tutors, and a rotating staff who treated the boy with polite distance. The mansion echoed with emptiness despite its opulence: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, walls lined with family portraits that showed happier times before the silence had settled in like fog. Then came Grace Thompson, the new maid. Hired through an agency after the previous housekeeper retired, Grace was a soft-spoken woman in her late 20s from Atlanta, now living in a small apartment in nearby Hartford. She had no fancy credentials, only steady hands, a gentle smile, and a quiet faith that kindness cost nothing. From her first day, she noticed things others had overlooked. She saw how Noah flinched at sudden movements he couldn't hear coming, how he pressed his palm to his ear when the pressure changed in the big house, how his little fingers dug absent-mindedly at the entrance of his right ear canal as if trying to scratch an itch no one else could feel. While polishing silver in the sunlit breakfast room one afternoon, she watched him do it again: touch, press, wince slightly. Something about the gesture tugged at her heart. She had raised younger siblings back home, knew the look of a child in discomfort even when they couldn't explain it. Over the next few weeks, Grace found small ways to connect with Noah. She left colorful sticky notes with simple drawings on his toys, a smiling sun, a waving hand, things that made him pause and smile back shyly. She sat with him during his quiet afternoons in the library, reading picture books aloud even though she knew he couldn't hear the words. She let the rhythm of her voice become a vibration he could feel through the couch. Victor barely noticed her at first, lost in conference calls and contracts. But one rainy evening in late fall, everything changed. Noah had been unusually restless that day, rubbing his ear more frantically than usual, tears welling up as he sat on the Persian rug in the family room. Grace was dusting nearby when she saw him wince sharply, clutching the side of his head. Without thinking, she knelt beside him. "Hey, sweet boy," she whispered, though she knew he couldn't hear. She gently took his hand away from his ear and tilted his head toward the soft lamplight. What she saw made her breath catch: a dark, shadowy mass deep in the canal, something that didn't belong. It wasn't wax or dirt, it looked almost alive, or at least foreign. Her heart pounded. She had no medical training, but instinct told her this was important. She glanced around. No one else was in the room. Victor was upstairs in his office. Grace hesitated only a moment. She reached into her apron pocket for a small flashlight she used for cleaning dark corners and a pair of fine tweezers from her manicure kit. With the lightest touch, she shone the light and peered in. There it was, something black, coiled, damp. Carefully, so carefully, she maneuvered the tweezers, hooked it gently, and pulled. For a second, nothing happened. Then it gave way. A small, wriggling, dark mass slid out, a large, engorged earwig, bloated and sluggish after years trapped inside, its legs still twitching faintly in her palm. Noah's eyes widened in shock as the pressure released instantly. Grace stared at the insect in disbelief, then at the boy. In that frozen moment, Noah blinked rapidly. His mouth opened. A tiny, hoarse sound escaped, raw, unused vocal cords straining for the first time. Ah, ah. It wasn't a word yet, but it was sound. Real sound. Grace's hands trembled as she cupped his face. Noah touched his ear again, but this time in wonder, not pain. Tears spilled down his cheeks, not from hurt, but from the sudden flood of sensation. The world had cracked open. Victor burst into the room moments later, alerted by the unusual noise echoing through the normally silent halls. He froze in the doorway, seeing his son on the floor, Grace kneeling with something dark in her hand, and Noah looking up at him with eyes full of tears and something new, recognition, hope. What is going on here? Victor demanded, voice sharp with fear and confusion. Grace stood slowly, opening her palm to show him the creature. Sir, this was in his ear. It must have been there for years. Maybe since he was a baby. The doctors never looked deep enough because they assumed it was congenital. But this blocked everything. Victor stared at the insect, then at his son. Noah reached out tentatively, lips moving. The sound came clearer this time, cracked but unmistakable. D.